Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parsha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamed in Highland Park, New Jersey, at the Highland Park Conservative Temple, Congregation Anshe Emet, and joining me, my good friends, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky, Anshe Chesed, New York City, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Schechter Day School of Long Island. It's great to see you guys. Hey, big shout out to Machane Ramah in the Berkshires. And we are being broadcast, we hope, recorded. For this week's Parsha. We are recording on day one, day two of camp. Camp started yesterday. So we want to wish at the beginning to all of our friends and to the Chanichim and to the Tzevet of Machane Ramah in the Berkshires have a wonderful, wonderful summer. We look forward to seeing you, hopefully, when we come up. Maybe we'll bring a Parsha Talk live there, the three of us. What do you think? I think that's a great idea.
Really fun. I want to send special greetings to Rosh Machane Bet, Shaya Kalmanovsky. Love you, Shaiki.
Shaya Kalmanovsky, okay.
As long as we're talking about Ramah, we have to refer to it by its affectionate name, Machanenu Shalanu.
Machanenu Shalanu. Big shout out Tommy Shemesh, also. Miriam.
Tommy Shemesh.
Last year we were. Do you know that they did a Parsha Talk, the Next Generation show?
No.
Yeah, with Allison Joseph.
Seriously, yeah. They had kids play our roles. Okay, I have to say that was so touching, so honored. So I hope they're going to do another Parsha Talk, the Next Generation, with kids playing the roles of the three of us. Okay, and we could give each other our own nicknames or proclivities, but let's stick with the text, okay? We have a double parsha. We have a double parsha this week. Hukkat Balak. We're catching up with Israel, which is in Israel they're reading just Balak this week. Hukkat starts out with the rules pertaining to Parah Adumah. We read that parsha on the Shabbat Parah, the Sabbath of the cow, and we may have talked about it in the past. The idea that people go through a sense of defilement, or actually a state of defilement with contact with the dead, the corpse being the prime, the most powerful agent of toxicity, as it were, impurity, and that there needs to be a cleansing method, a ritual of cleansing, or as they describe in the scholarly literature, a detergent. It's called a detergent, okay?
It's a double cleansing, because you have to go through the ritual both on the third and the seventh day.
Okay, and when do you get sprinkled?
The third and the seventh day.
Third and the seventh day. You get sprinkled with eau de red heifer, okay? A special...
So on my show, they serve buffalo chips at the Kiddush this week.
This is, what would be the appropriate menu for, Hukkat? I know that...
You know what, actually, it's funny that you say red heifer, because that is what we always say in English, but isn't a heifer...
A young,
but a parah, like I think an egel or an eglah is a heifer, and a parah, which is what the parah adumah is a full-grown, but...
Well, I'm holding the JPS translation here, and it says... Instruct the Israelite people to bring you a red cow without blemish, in which there is no defect and on which no yoke has been laid. Okay, so red probably means rust-colored. It's not,
So David Marcus said that it really means brown.
Brown.
Because there is no biblical Hebrew word for brown, so they used Adom, which is better suited to a cow's color than red.
Indeed.
Right, and I think this is correct. It's well known that maybe we even talked about this a few weeks ago in Shlach Lecha, when we talk about the Techelet. Is well known that ancient languages, and their color words, they had very fewer words for color that covered a wider range, and so Techelet could be purple, could be blue, could even be green, and Adumah, I think, also carries a wide range. But the one thing that I would say about that I don't see how you can tell this story without thinking that there's a blood association.
Of course.
This is a purification from contact with death. So the color of the cow being blood colored, it seems
Right, but
irresistible.
ultimately the cow is insignificant because it's rendered to ash.
Well, you
It
take
does
also
not have a, a red color.
cedar wood, hyssop, and crimson stuff. Okay, those things are thrown into the pile with the carcass of the red cow. So what you're trying to do is create the most potent concentrated mixture of redness. Okay, and then pulverize it into a powder. Mix it with mayim chayim, not holy water, but live water,
Yeah, fresh water, fresh
fresh
flowing
water,
water.
and create a kind of mixture that is the purificatory agent. It all makes sense to me.
So
I think this is right. And the it's true, of course, that the ash is going to be gray. It's not going to be red. But what this amounts to is, I mean, I'm poetically imagining here. It seems to amount to Bilah hamavet lanetzach, in the words of Isaiah, death being swallowed up. So the person has encountered death, but you have to take all that concentrated death color, burn it up, sprinkle it away, and that's going to bring the person who's touched death back into the realm
but
of life.
if you associate it with blood, then blood represents life. So in effect, you're restoring the contaminated person to life by sprinkling life
Exactly.
force on them.
Not
Or
only is blood, but you have water. So the two agents of life are part of this in the most concentrated form. Now you can't concentrate water, but Maim Chayim is obviously a special category of water, and the concentrated ash redness mixed with a large quantity of water will give you an effective supply of red cow water detergent that a few sprinkles will last, right?
They should market this as a new detergent in the market. There's Tide, there's All, there's like
And red cow
and red
detergent.
cow ash.
Red cow. Okay. Well, on the serious part of it, though, I would say and I know we've talked about this before. The experience of death or the experience of defilement, in any way, through either the experience of a violent act or something, akin to that, um, requires some kind of set of rituals to go from one state to another state. And of course, we have a whole architecture of rituals in mourning to take us from that state of loss to the state of going back to life. But the encounter with a dead body or the proximity to a dead body does shake you to the core if you are, I guess, attuned or attentive to it. I mean, I don't see how anybody can ever get used to it unless you are so detached from your emotional life. I mean, on
well, you ever
some
see the
level,
movie Bullet?
no.
So great movie from the 60s, Steve McQueen, who is a cop. And one of the problems his girlfriend has with him is his callous regard. He's a homicide detective. His seeming callous regard for
Death.
disregard for life,
Yeah, life. Okay.
right? Because he confronts death almost every day. And he built up defense mechanisms, which to an outsider seem quite callous. So
Yeah.
I think you can get used to it.
Well, I don't know. Look, in our business, we come into contact with it, but I'm in contact with morticians and funeral directors on a regular basis, and they're in contact with it on a daily basis. And yeah, they're jaded and they are used to it, but I can tell you that there are some times that even they, as grizzled and sober as they are, there are some cases that really throw them too.
Well, right.
Yeah.
But I had congregants, for example, talk about their distress in being medical students with the kind of, because people build up a kind of a black humor thing about it, and and the cadavers that they use, they sort of build up that protective, attitude that is less than reverential. But I know that the people, for example, who do the Chevra Kadisha, are extremely reverent
Absolutely.
about
They
these.
have to be. They have to be reverent, and that's why, I mean, and they're mindful of the holy nature of their work. Okay, so we moved from that chapter. Can we talk for a second about the death of, on the subject of death? Okay.
This is the portion of death. We've got a lot of death in this
A lot
portion.
of death in this part, in Hukkat, not the Balak part, but there's a little bit maybe. The Israelites arrive in a body at the wilderness of Tzin on the first month, on the first new moon, and the people stayed at Kadesh. Miriam died there and was buried there. That's it. That's all we hear. No mourning. No, she died at the mouth of God, at the kiss of God. No, she was beloved by the people. And then the very next verse tells us that V'lo hayamayim la'ida, there was no water for the community. They joined up against Moses and Aaron. They quarreled with them, Moses. If we had perished when our brothers perished at the instance of the Lord. Lu gavanu bigva achenu lifnei Adonai. Velama havetem et kahal Adonai. Why have you brought the Lord's congregation into this wilderness for us and our beasts to die there? Why did you make us leave Egypt to bring us to this wretched place, a place with no grain or figs or vines or pomegranates? There is not even water to drink. The desert is a place of death. They've just had this whole, in the Torah we have this whole chapter, set of laws about life and purification and contact with that, and now they're in contact with death, and there's no water for them, and they're afraid they're going to die.
Well, so there's an irony here. If there's no water, they can't make the mixture for the ashes of the red heifer.
Isn't that something? Yes.
And so how do they purify themselves from their contact with the death of Miriam?
I don't think that's what they're worried about.
No, well, so it occurred to me today when I was looking over this, is that we hear the Israelites complain over and over again about certain wants in their community. They don't have water, they don't have food, but you never hear Aaron and Moshe complain about it. And it makes you wonder, are they living in a different world, or is that just to heighten how ungrateful the Israelites actually are?
The Bible doesn't record their complaints. They complain about the people. They say, "Oh, the people are complaining again."
But you would think that. I mean, I think we've been in situations, perhaps on hikes, camping, whatever, where people complain about not having water. It's generally not a complaint that only one person has.
So when you're the leader of such a group, and the group is really tired and on the verge, your job is to hold the group together. I can remember as a Rosh Edah, okay, where we had a whole group, my whole Edah. I took them to the forest for this happened 3 years in a row. I took them what we call the Linat Shabbat, and Fridays, we worked so hard to get everything, and by the afternoon, everyone was exhausted, and people were not doing what they were supposed to do, and they were complaining, whatever. My job was to make sure that we got to Shabbat and make sure we had all the food prepared, and to help. Obviously, it's not Moses here. It's like, come on, everyone, let's get with the program. We have a job to do. That's what. So I don't have the luxury. This is what I'm saying here. They don't have the luxury to mourn, Moses and Aaron. They don't have the luxury to give complaints, right? And anyone in leadership knows this, that you certainly don't have the luxury to complain to other people, in the echelon more than you. And what you need to do is kind of hold it in. And
so in that light, Elliot, that explains then the great sin at the rock, because this is the one time where Moses complains directly to the people, right? All the other times he's complaining to God about how wicked the people are.
Okay, so let's take it in the text. Go ahead, Jeremy.
No, you continue on this. I just want to make one observation after we're done with this.
All right, so Moses and Aaron came away from the congregation to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and they fell on their faces. the presence of the Lord appeared to them, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, You and your brother Aaron take the rod and assemble the community, and before their very eyes order the rock to yield its water. Okay? Dibartem el הסלע לעיניהם ונתן מימה והוצאתם להם מים מן הסלע. Thus you shall produce water for them from the rock and provide drink for the congregation and their beasts. Next verse, 9. Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he had commanded him. Moses and Aaron assembled the congregation in front of the rock, and he said to them, Listen, you rebels! Shall we get water for you out of this rock?
Out of this rock.
Out of this rock? And Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod. Out came copious water, and the community and the beast drank. And because of that, but the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, Because you did not trust me enough to affirm my sanctity in the sight of the Israelite people, therefore you shall not lead this congregation to the land that I have given them. Those are the waters of Meribah. Ba 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 bam. Okay, so this is it. This is the great Christ. Everything is lost in a moment, and there's so many layers to this story. In doing some research about this, every single commentary has a different kind of angle to it, a different approach to it, a different reason. What did he do to deserve? What was the great sin? And B, is the punishment, and we're calling it a punishment here, God's reaction to it, is that punishment, appropriate?
Jeremy, you were going to add something.
About a related topic, not about this question. I'll hold it off for a second.
Okay.
So there's a few ways to think about this question. There's a few things that Moshe is supposed to have done wrong, right? The commentary literature will say. One is he was supposed to speak to the rock, supposed to make this complete, wonderful, spectacular miracle, but he strikes the rock instead of an act of speech. It comes out with an act of violence. But the weakness of this interpretation is that this appears to be the second retelling of the almost exact same incident as happened in Shmot, in Parashat Beshalach, where he's told to smack the rock. So, it's not obvious. Either this is one story told twice, and there really isn't anything wrong with smacking the rock, and that's or it's two different things that smacking the rock is the way you do it, and he's successfully done it in the past. He yells at the people, and he calls them rebels, and he loses his temper, and that's just not a good thing for a religious leader to do. And so maybe that's the problem. Maybe the problem is, it says, shall we bring you forth water from this rock? When he should have said, the master of the world is going to perform a miracle on your behalf, and Moshe sort of arrogates to himself the miracleness and all those things different commentators will say. And we've discussed this in the past. I have my own view that this is a kind of a Lashon Nikiah, sort of a euphemistic story, that Moses and Aaron are actually being punished for the golden calf and the smashing of the tablets, which that's what I think is actually the more logical things going on here. But admittedly, that you have to read between the lines to extract that one, because Aaron does nothing in this story. It's absolutely nothing, and yet he's punished. So what did he do wrong here? He personally didn't do anything wrong, and Moshe, smacking a rock does sound like a little bit like smashing stone tablets. That's what I think.
So I want to add something here, and it's kind of curious what the reaction is to the situation. So at the end of the story, the water comes forth copiously, and Aaron and Moshe are punished by saying they will not enter the land of Israel. And the name of the place is changed to reflect the people's behavior, a place to which they'll never come back again, but still carries a kind of stigma with it. Whenever it's recalled, we were at Meribah, we know that the people are actually responsible. And what I would like to suggest is perhaps a different way of understanding the story, is that long after the events have taken place, everyone knows that Moshe did not get into the land of Israel. And the question is why? And this is a story that can explain why he didn't get in. And it attributes the reason why he can't get in to the people. The people are actually responsible for Moses's failure.
No, in the end of Deuteronomy, it says, "Ki ma'altem." You disgraced me. And there is and right here in the text, it's, "You did not sanctify me in the presence of the people.
Yan lo
You
ha'emantem
did
bi
not affirm my
lahakdisheni.
sanctity in the sight of the people." Okay.
Right, but what's so odd about that is look at the reaction of the people themselves. The water comes forth and they drink heartily and they stop complaining.
Right.
They
So
got what they wanted.
So what is it that would have constituted sufficient? The translation you read is to affirm my sanctity. Yan lo ha'emantem bi lahakdisheni. You didn't believe in me enough or show enough faithfulness to sanctify me.
To affirm my sanctity is
Affirm my sanctity is what the translation has. Like what is it that God would have wanted? Is God saying, dude, I was going to perform the best miracle, and you guys you turned.
So here I resort to the ref, Richard Elliott Friedman, who talks about this as a moment where Moses, in effect, becomes, the agent of the miracle, and Moses usurps a divine prerogative, and uses the staff, and the staff becomes a kind of magical instrument, and that is problematic in terms of the sense that the power of the miracle is removed from God and given to a human being. So there's something very compelling about that. And
I understood the claim. However, there's a couple of big howevers on this, and with that could be the explanation of when Moses says, "Notzi lachem mayim min hasela," we will bring you forth.
Me and God.
Me and Aaron. If it usurps the divine splendor, those two things could be used together. But there's a big however here, which is to say that the plagues were instituted through the staff, and the Exodus version of the water in the rock episode happened through the staff. The staff is seen to be like, yes, one might object that it seems a little uncomfortably close to a magic wand, but it has been in plenty of stories a perfectly good, magic.
What would have been worse would have been, here I want to take Moses' defense, is that speaking to the rock is ridiculous. It's like
talking to a rock.
It's like talking to a rock. Wait a second.
I think Paul Simon said something about that.
You want me to talk to the rock? You want me to speak to this rock? That's ridiculous. And here I concur, with you in the sense that the frustration is at its peak, and
so
he becomes
violent. Way,
that's the point. He becomes violent with words and violent with acts.
Moses here usurps God's role, not with the miracle, but by getting angry at the people. That's something that is properly only reserved to God. And Moses is supposed to be the defense attorney. He's supposed to bear their burden before God. And by doing what he did, in effect, he arrogates to himself the divine mandate. And that would be, at least that would make sense of the words, that you did not sanctify me in front of the people.
But there's been plenty of time where he's been angry at the people.
Yeah.
That's what prophets do. Afterwards,
But
that's what prophets do. That's what prophets do, is they yell at the people. As Yochanan Muff said, they represent God to the people and represent the people to God. And so at this moment, he could perhaps be justifiably yelling at them for their. Now, here's what I want to observe before, which I just think is from the very beginning of this part where Miriam dies, and parentheses, by the way, many of our listeners will have intuited this anyway, but this is the this is the source for the idea that Miriam had this miraculous well. It was the merit of Miriam that gave them water all through
Desert.
the desert years. And then when she died, the well dried up or vanished or whatever. And so that's why the juxtaposition of Miriam's death and the complaining about the lack of water. But you read at the beginning of chapter 20, they come to the wilderness of Sin. B'chodesh Harishon is the first new moon, but it doesn't say the first new moon of what, right?
Here.
And what is taken to be, what the commentators point out, is that it's and it makes perfect sense. It's the first new moon of the 40th year. All the wandering has happened. And so the Torah has basically not told us, after Parshat Shlach Lecha, in which the spies and the failed mission of the spies brings down a 40-year wandering in the wilderness, nothing else. There's nothing else in the Torah. It's been completely glossed over, and we've jumped 40 years later. And it actually, on the one hand, it makes the story of Miriam's death in the absence of water, it ties them, it makes it a little poignant. But it also, I think, underlies a strangeness, which is that they are about to have finally arrived. They are just about at the threshold, and after 40 years of wandering, which has been maintained by the divine, sustenance in the form of water and in the form of the manna, now, Miriam dies, there's no water, and they are just like plummeted. Everything has been so great, and now they're just this curveball is thrown their way, and they just fall into despair and complaining. Come on, guys. 40 years is about to end. Hang in there just a little bit longer, but it to me makes the whole urgency of the episode kind of like a little heartbreaking.
Yeah, but there's also one added piece to that, which of course is there, which is that these are their children. These are a new generation. This is a new generation of the children of the people that left Egypt. So on the one hand, they have not grown up with the humiliation of slavery. On the other hand, they've certainly grown up under their parents who have complained once or twice, and they have to go through their own transition and succeed in folding into their own lives the experience of frustration and overcoming that frustration. This is
right. Well, there's an oddity here, because I think later in the Parsha we have the episode with the snake,
yeah,
Nehushtan, and there, as a result, thousands of people die as a result of a sin. But here, no one is recorded as dying.
no,
And to perhaps strengthen Jeremy's point, this is actually the generation that does enter the land.
yeah.
Right? Because if it's the 40th year, most of them are going to be alive when they finally walk in with Joshua. So what makes them the great generation?
Yeah, this is supposed to be the greatest generation, ready for real hardship that's going to come in war, and yet they're thrown into a panic. I mean, one could say that really, from a modern critical perspective, well, this doesn't actually have to be the 40th year, and maybe it is the same story that was told in Exodus and it's just repeated twice, and out of sequence or something. But it really strikes me as a difficulty to think that the generation that was brought up to be ready for the entrance to the land is mighty quick to fall to pieces.
All
Right. Here it's worth recalling the interesting connection in Exodus, because we have the story of the rock and then the story of Amalek. And the rock is the enemy within, and Amalek is the enemy without.
Okay. We are running out of time for the end of the parsha. There's so much more material to talk to, so we're not gonna even skim this. But we'll just mention that this is the second parsha is Balak. It's a really
One of the people parshiot that's named after a person.
Right, and I guess the highlight of it is the oracles of Bilaam, including the first words that are recited as a Jew walks into the synagogue: "Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael." The words that are sung as everyone begins their tefillot at machanenu. Okay,
I thought that the first words a Jew says is when they come into synagogue is, "What's for Kiddush today?"
because how do I get a seat at the back? Right.
You have to come early.
So here, basically, Balak is a strategy of encounter. We've had Sichon and Og already, and a few Canaanites as well. And Balak, who is the king of Moab, wants to employ this prophet for hire, Bilaam, to use the weapon, the most powerful weapon, the word, against Israel. He fails uh, tremendously, um, and maybe it's a kind of comical answer to all of this suffering, or maybe it's a kind of validation of what has been stated to Abraham at the beginning. I will bless those who bless you, and curse those who curse you. I can't help but think that those words, which are given to Abraham at the beginning of the whole story, come into fruition here, because the Bilam understands this. He understands this central truth about this people, that if you curse them, bad things are going to happen to you. But if you bless them, good things are going to happen to you. You will be blessed. There will be something about that. And in a sense, there's a truth that I think resounds to this day. I identify anti-Semitism in this truth, that nothing good comes to the anti-Semite when the anti-Semite invades curses against Israel. In fact, a lot of bad things happen to anti-Semites and culture because of anti-Semitism and because of curses against the Jewish people. Bilam is, I think, a symbol of that. In 30 seconds, discuss. Rebut. No,
Well said.
Well, I mean, Bilam he is like seized with, he's nofel uglu einayim. He goes into a trance and his eyes are open. And um and so I think that like the image is I don't know that he comes to the recognition that hating the Jews is a bad thing, but God like takes a bit of a spirit possession, and he becomes an instrument of blessing. I mean, it's sort of well known that the Abraham and Bilam stories are a match set. There's a lot of the same words and same phrases, and Abraham is sent to be a blessing because he tries to be a blessing. He wants to be a blessing. That's his destiny. Bilam wants to be an agent of cursing, but it just doesn't work because this is people's got it. They got the mojo, and so you need to you get aligned to blessing when you come near them.
So I would just draw our attention to another saying of Bilam, that he describes the people as a people that lives apart, not reckoned among the nations. And I wonder, first of all, if that was true in Bilam's day, and even more, perhaps, if we want it to be true in our day. Because it seems that part of our journey as Jews is to figure out our place in the world, which is as old as our people.
Well said. And with that, we're going to conclude this Parsha Talk, first Parsha Talk of the Machaneh Ramah summer. And it's almost like the 150th of our Parsha Talks. So we'll have a special sesquicentennial celebration of our Parsha Talks. In the meantime, we want to wish everybody Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
See you next week on the next edition of Parsha Talk.